What does the phrase, "it's never too late," mean to you? I like to think that for me, it means that I am never too old to be whom I've always wanted to be or live a life that I love. What if it simply meant that this is your time to set some health goals that are actionable, that would include self-love, some weightlifting, good nutrition, less stress, and more sleep? For me, it means making myself a little uncomfortable, owning what was standing in my way, and putting my health first. Our guest today decided in her early 60s that it was time to change up her health and her mindset. Her physical transformation since 2020 is astounding, but not only because of her more than 50-pound weight loss, but also how taking care of herself opened up a whole new world of opportunity, joy, and confidence. Health, wellness, career, relationships, and everything in between. We're removing the taboo from what really matters in midlife. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. Welcome to the show, everyone. You are just going to love the energy that our guest brings today. Susan Guidi is a 66-year-old digital creator, comedian, business owner, bodybuilder, and motivational speaker who wants to be an example of what is possible at any age. Welcome to Asking for a Friend, Susan Guidi.
Thank you, Michelle, so much. I'm honored. I am so excited when someone takes a chance on letting me share my joy of this journey.
Well, you have an amazing journey. I've told you, your journey really started a very long time ago. And I would love for you to just tell everyone where you're from, about your family, and some of those details and how it's propelled you to where you are today.
Okay, I am from Tampa, Florida. I am 66 years old, as she said. It's often hard for me to even think that on podcasts and Instagram, I'd be proudly announcing and fiercely defensive of being able to say, this is just 66 and this is the way it looks in this body. I grew up in Tampa, which is unusual. Not a lot of people come from Tampa, Florida. I am from a half Cuban, half American family, which was not uncommon growing up here in Tampa, Florida. We have a lot of Cuban immigrants here. I grew up in a largely Hispanic, very Catholic, because it was the 50s, environment. It was a wonderful childhood. If I had to condense things down, I think I often say that I was raised by a tough mom, a mom who herself was orphaned at 8, was forced to work as a sock maker as a little girl in a Cuban Catholic convent. She certainly had some struggles that generation didn't even begin to unpack. They just stuffed more stuff in the suitcase.
Absolutely, yeah.
With her harshness, I was given a dad who I adored. I was the first girl of 3. He was everything. I think he must have played music to me in the womb, and he was a musician.
Oh.
When I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. So my father was doing mortuary science school. So he was a funeral director.
And that's our connection, because I am in Cincinnati and we were so excited to know we had that common connection.
So cool. My mother, Cuban, they met in Tampa. And then 6 months later, when I was a baby, they moved back. I spent all of my childhood in Tampa. My mother being tough made me gravitate even more to idolizing my dad. He was a man, if I had a slideshow behind me, who loved to eat. He loved to eat. I loved to eat. My mother would criticize him for eating and call him a big fat whatever in her Cuban screaming accent. Whatever it was he did, I wanted to be just like him. I often endured the wrath of her, a little bit of jealousy and not siding with her. He was an amazing funeral director, but he was an even better musician.
Interesting.
For those of your listeners that are young enough to remember a man called Ed Sullivan.
Yes.
The America's Got Talent program before AGT even came on. And my dad actually was a contestant on Ed Sullivan.
Wow.
He realized that I guess monetarily he would never make money from music, but he was an accomplished harmonica player. Another odd thing. Growing up, from the time I was 6 years old, I played whatever instrument he would expose me to. I started playing the piano. He would teach me Beethoven before the teachers would even teach me a scale on the piano. And before I knew it, I was playing the harmonica as well. And my father was constantly criticized by my mom because in order to play in a band, his other two band members were in two other states. So he would spend his weekends traveling to play. And finally, she was like, why don't you teach the kids? And I heard it and said, Daddy, we can form a band. Because I always had this big thinking. For those of us in this age group, the Partridge Family was huge in those days.
Absolutely.
And I thought we can be the harmonica version of the Partridge Family. What ensued was my mother made costumes. My father did all the gig setting up and getting us jobs in hospitals and retirement homes and service organizations. I know.
Oh, this is awesome.
I was in heaven. Heaven. The year I entered high school, not only was I the lead harmonica player for a family traveling band, I had the unfortunate experience of breaking my front tooth. My mother, who often I think shaped a lot of my mindset early on, was a woman who we would say lived in scarcity. When the dentist said to her, we have a lovely porcelain white cap that we can put on her front tooth, my mother, in her Spanish accent, screamed, how much is that? Is that expensive? Because that's how she talked. And he said, well, we do have a cheaper silver version. And so, I know every time I speak, the audience does exactly what you do. There's a collective moan when they hear that I started high school with a silver front tooth. And it was co-ed Catholic high school. So this was the first time I was exposed to boys, really. And there was no bling or grills or anything. I was way ahead of my time.
You were.
But what I realized was I suffered quite a bit of bullying. I didn't see it so much as that because I tended to be this person with rose-colored glasses. That was often what people referred to me as. I played the harmonica and I had a silver front tooth. And so I often begin, as I give these motivational speeches, to realize there was something innate in me that already were skills or superpowers that were working for me for survival. One was I was an optimist. Most of the time, you couldn't catch me sad. Second, I developed my father's skill of humor. That was in deflecting my mother's criticism. I learned to deflect what I would ultimately learn about the silver tooth because I'd open my mouth and boys were brutal. I'd say I'd walk into a math class and I'd hear da-da-dun, 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 dun, dun.
Oh, no.
I realized if I could get ahead of the game by self-deprecation or making a joke or whatever, I had a tool in my toolkit to almost deal with the pain, which I think a lot of comedians do. You'll go back to your childhood and say, oh, that's where the humor came from. That's what I used it for. I think the other thing that I had that was because of it, it made me determined. It was like, hey, I'm starting off playing the harmonica on a silver tooth. I'm determined. Like, you can't stop me. I had sort of a fearlessness. And what I would go on to realize that I often say for women my age, we've done hard things.
Yes.
So life has prepared us for this moment. You couldn't be here sitting doing a podcast with you if life hadn't prepared me with a little bit of knocks and bruises and badges and stories to tell. But we've done hard things. Sometimes I think my message, even to myself, is that look at what got you here. This is no time to be mediocre.
Right.
And it's not okay to be mediocre. It's not a time to just get comfortable, not a time to get comfortable. You can have peace, you can have balance, but don't get comfortable because We need women like myself more than ever to say, look at what I survived. And look at what I'm still doing. And look at what's ahead of me, these limitless possibilities. I think that for me, those skills would go on without me even knowing it to serve me quite well. I graduated from high school. Immediately, it was the financial crisis of the 70s, 1975. My parents lost their jobs.
Ugh.
The year they lost their job, I remember being at somebody's house. In fact, I just saw her 40 years later. I just saw this friend that I grew up with. I remember we were playing in her room, and my mother called me and said, Susan, come home. She's always dramatic. Come home. Your father and I lost our jobs. Why would I come home?
Yeah. Who wants to be in that mess?
I don't want to come home. Why come home? But I realized, oh, shoot, I'm not going to be able to go to medical school because I had planned to go to medical school. I was going to have to figure out a way to pay for my college, and I went to community college. Long story short, I went to something called nuclear medicine. Nuclear medicine led me to this beautiful career that I am currently in of something called ultrasound, which in those days, in the late 70s, was almost primitive. I often call myself the Marie Curie of ultrasound because, again, all of these skills like determination and optimism and being enthusiastic served me in ultrasound when every time I would go to a doctor and say, hey, look at this picture, the doctors would say, that's useless. We have CT scan, we have an x-ray. But you couldn't scan a pregnant woman with x-rays. I would go back to my lab and take my pictures, and month after month, I would go downstairs and say, hey, look at these pictures. And I'd scan all by myself, just collecting images until one day, 6 months into my beginning ultrasound career, I found a aortic aneurysm in an elderly gentleman. And an aortic aneurysm is almost like you get the beginning weakness in a tire that'll about to blow, the same thing, but with a major artery in your abdomen. So if it blows, you're no longer here.
Correct.
I saved him. And then the doctor said, well, now we're going to hire somebody real to do your job. We're going to hire a real person.
Oh.
That led me to Johns Hopkins to go take a course so that I could be a real sonographer. And when I got there, it was like the universe said, we're going to keep you here. Would you like a job? And this was in Baltimore. And I moved and lived for almost 3 months with no furniture, no nothing, just to have the opportunity to be in Mecca. When I moved to Hopkins, they thought I was the most Latina person they had ever met because here in Tampa, I'm not 100% Cuban. I didn't really have a place where I wasn't really Cuban, but I wasn't really American. In Hopkins, oh my God, they thought I was the most Latina person they had ever met. So there was an opportunity to go to Chile.
Oh.
And I went to Chile to do the first course that had ever been given in South America in ultrasound. And I really didn't even know how to speak Spanish.
I was going to ask you if you were bilingual.
I thought I was.
Oh, but not so much.
But I was so cocky that, and that's what you can get by with a youthful, like I can do anything, right? I decided that in any of the lectures that I would give, and I was addressing physicians. So, I mean, what big male reproductive organs, right? That took balls. I decided that I would put O's or A's at the end of any word that I didn't know. I gave my first lecture in physics, and the joke goes, this is why I turned into a comedian, because the joke goes, I'm pointing to the slide, using it to describe these peaks of ultrasound that go up and down. And I get to the word peaks in Spanish because I'm improvising. And I thought, okay, I could put an A at the end of peaks, but that means to scratch. So I won't use that word. I'll say picos. That sounds good. So I say in Spanish, los picos se van para arriba, para abajo, para arriba, para abajo. The audience is going crazy. I'm thinking I'm killing. I'm like, oh my God, I have them wrapped. Only to realize at the end of the week, they gave me a list of words never to say again. And what I had described to the audience was the word pico was slang for male genitalia. I was saying, yes, the picos go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. Here I'm thinking I am the best speaker they've ever heard.
It's the beginning of your comedian career. You didn't even know it.
Didn't even know. And I killed. I met my former husband. We get married. We move to France. I have my first child. I give up everything. And I realized that as I prepared a recent motivational speech, and I'm sure that's similar for a lot of women, is these periods of pivoting. Like I go to France, I don't speak the language. I no longer have a job. The French wanted nothing to do with me. And I remember saying, what am I going to do? Now I'm pregnant and I meet a professor who was friends from my professors at Hopkins. And it was this rotund Frenchman, Monsieur Panigel. And he said, we're going to enroll you in a master's program here and we'll do research for a year. And for a year, I spent with this man who loved me, who gave me a chance, doing my master's degree for whatever that's worth in placental research. So it gave me a purpose because we had no computers in those days. There was no phone you could pick up and call. To call costs like your whole mortgage to call the United States in those days. People don't realize how much has changed over the course of 30 years.
Yeah, and it's not been that long.
I wrote letters. It took forever to get a letter back. I had no one to talk to. So France was really interesting. We leave France. I have one baby. We go back to the States and then back to Chile. Now, Chile's a time of a dictatorship. I lose everything all over again. I have nothing. I have a baby, which is awesome, but no job, no nothing. I start all over again in Chile. I started teaching in clinics. I think I made $125 a month.
Oh.
And Chile in those days was tough. That was all those songs that Sting made about the missing, and there were toca de queda. That was where the women would come out and beat the pots. But somehow I adapted. I learned to cook. Oh my God, I would cook for like 3 hours a day because we had help. I raised my baby girl. I was half the day with her. But then we realized Chilean life was tough. So we moved back to this country. We were 4 years into the marriage. And when I say that I found out, like many women do, that my former husband was having an affair, but it wasn't with the woman. It was with the man.
Yeah.
And it was in the peak of AIDS. And I was from a Cuban Catholic family where you marry the first person you're with because you don't sleep around.
Yeah. How did you deal with that with your very Catholic mother? I mean, I can't even imagine.
It was tough. So I would say that there weren't a lot of times that I could be vulnerable. She was quite critical. I was starting to lose weight. I was in the thick of it. I was having a time. We had gone to psychologists, as one does, but I remember one of the things that came out of that was they say, you know, Susan, he deals in the intellect and you deal in the emotion. As a young woman, I heard, he's smart, you're crazy. I would say, but what about this guy? He's been friend, so nobody picked up on it. And then when I told my mother that I thought we were having problems, she promptly said in her Cuban voice, you know what your problem is? You don't cook or clean enough. As if not cooking or clean enough makes a man gay. Like you could just say, you know what? I'm not doing the laundry today. Poof, he's gay.
Yeah. We'd have a lot of gay men running around.
Right. Well, I think for me, the minute she said that, it sent a message to me that this was not something I was easily going to be able to share. I don't remember exactly my feelings. I remember I was pretty scared because all I kept thinking is the minute I say he's having an affair with a man, it's AIDS, I'm going to have to leave. And I wasn't psychologically prepared for that. I decided I would just stay quiet. And I stayed in the closet for another 18 years.
He was carrying on with this same person this whole time?
I haven't studied a lot. There's a book called The Other Side of the Closet. You don't hear a lot about what happens to the spouse of the person who's in a relationship like that, because I could say, you could get up on stage and say, oh, he had an affair with the women. And then women, we have a glass of wine and say, oh, that bastard. My husband had an affair with the woman too. But there was no sitting down to say, it's a guy.
Yeah.
This was now, we were starting to have a little bit of money. My kids were in a nice private school. One of the things that you find as you start to research this data is that he was a very smart man. He was a pathological liar. When he told me he wasn't, I believed him out of just survival.
Necessity?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking to myself, this is what it's like to be a nun. I'm just going to be a nun. I grew up with nuns. I grew up with strict nuns. I literally told myself that because I had no example. There was no internet. There was nothing you could research. I found myself saying, okay, the kids didn't ask for this, as women often do. How many women have similar stories? It's just not mine. But they just said, I'll just do whatever it takes to make sure that I either protect the kids from something that they're not going to be able to handle at this stage. And then what you would find was that life was comfortable and safe if I just pretended we were the perfect family, which I did really well. I'm really good at pretending until I wasn't. Until all of a sudden you reach that age where I got pregnant again, 9 years after my second child. And I often said that was a gift. That was God, the universe, whoever it is that you believe in, saying, this is going to get you through the next stage of your life. Then I got angry and I started to get angry. And when I was angry, I did not like myself because I was just angry all the time.
Yeah.
About 3 years before I finally cut all ties, I started to tell people for the first time. And I often say to women, I hired a female attorney. Well, I didn't hire her, but I had a consult with her. The first attorney I ever sit down with, where I actually say the words to her, he's gay. And you know what she said to me? Oh, darling, you're married to a physician. You have it made. Go have yourself an affair. As if that were that easy, to just go have myself an affair.
Wow.
I thought, the world's not going to be an easy place to me. You need to do some homework before you get up and leave, because your world, as you know it, talk about starting over. I didn't even prepare enough for my world ending the way it was going to end. Because what I realized was that, and I joke about this, but he got the gay card and he got the doctor card. Wow. That was then when comedy came.
Yeah.
And starting my own business, because I thought, okay, you're about as low as you're going to get right now. Let's start from scratch and take some really risky chances, because it can't get any worse than this. I started my own business there. And that was another, but I was used to people telling me ultrasound was worthless. I started my own 3D ultrasound business where no one knew anything about 3D. Now 3D is on every cover of every magazine and every Instagram post for grandkids, for everything. Everybody knows what a 3D ultrasound is.
So you had to go out and sell it.
Oh my God, I would sit in doctors' offices with my card and the brochures and these pictures, just like I did when I started as a young woman, going, this is going to change everything. And they'd go, this is what they said then. It's a tool looking for a use. I'll never forget that line. It's for entertainment only. And I would say, well, don't we need a little entertainment? Because this has gotten a little dark here. Why don't we have some entertainment in ultrasound? Why don't we take some joy in showing parents and grandparents their unborn children? Because it takes a village. So if we can surround that unborn child, and it makes me super emotional, because I knew then that if we could give that baby a chance to be marinated while they were in the womb, because people were excited, I had the amazing role of saying, let me hold your hand for a minute and take you on a journey for 45 minutes and show you your baby's lips and that he has toes like daddy. And look, that nose, oh, that's mama's nose and lips. Look, he's sucking.
Oh.
He weighs 4 pounds. He moves when you quack. I had a doctor. It was the first doctor I won over. And when he came in the room, he goes, I always quacked to her, because he knew it was a girl. And he was like a non-believer, right? I always quack to her.
Right.
I go, let's do an experiment. Start quacking. And all of a sudden, the baby's heart slowed. And she turned her head in the direction of her daddy's voice and started sucking. I said, she knows you're there. I knew I had a job bigger than 3D ultrasound. That was 24 years ago, to bring back humanity. I didn't care if I did one patient a day, and I don't take insurance. As like my son, it's been one of the biggest gifts to myself I've ever been able to do, because still at 66, I don't plan on retiring anytime soon. Because when I go in that room, I get to practice love and joy.
Oh my gosh. It's a great reason to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, to get that feeling every day, how wonderful. And it just surprises me that doctors didn't see this as a diagnostic tool back then. I mean, it just blows my mind.
I mean, the great academics do, but the academics live in a small world, and I'm friends with a lot of the gods of ultrasound. And I visited them in their labs, and I say, you don't understand what it's like to go outside of Mecca. When we go outside of Mecca, there's corporate medicine. And corporate medicine is about making the investors money. And we have not allotted time for humanity. And in that, we've created a fear-based system. And there's no room for fear in this. Fear takes away the power of the sonographer to be able to enjoy her job, because she's been told, you're not allowed to talk to the patient. But then you know what happens? No one talks to the patient. And it's 2023, and you would think we'd learn.
Yeah.
But our system's a bit more broken than it ever has been. For me to also know I fought for something that makes a difference in young parents' life. Oh my God. If I just quit tomorrow, microphone drop, I'd be the happiest soul on the planet.
You've done some wonderful work, and you always take that with you. That's awesome. And then you have this comedy career. I'm going to call it your creative outlet, but was it also kind of like therapy for you too?
1,000%. I think every woman of a certain age should get up and be given a microphone and just said, for the next 5 minutes, rant. Just rant. I studied in New York. I would pay for myself to go on sabbatical. That would be one of the exercises. You just were given the microphone. And what would you say if you knew no one would judge you? You couldn't fail. You were just allowed 5 minutes of a what the F rant. And then once I got up there, I realized, ooh, I like being up here. Now, do I have some mindset work and spirituality stuff I need to work on? Yes, because I think that on the other side of being a comic, there's this little girl who's trying to people please by performing. I learned that very early on, that I don't have to be on 24/7 for people to like me. But yes, it was 1,000% therapy, because I was dealing with some, even for me, it was more this unplanned, I didn't think they were going to react like that. And I joke about even my own gynecologist. And I couldn't make this stuff up if I wanted to. I was literally in the stirrups, and I loved him. He has an interesting backstory. I actually worked for this man for 30 years, and Wonder Woman comes up a lot in my subject material. She's just been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. In fact, my jacket has Wonder Woman on it. But I worked for the son of the creator of Wonder Woman for 30 years, and I didn't know it.
How does that happen?
Well, if you read the story of Wonder Woman, as amazing as it was a scandalous kind of story. The creator of Wonder Woman created Wonder Woman on the example of, he had a mistress and a wife. So he had a polyamorous relationship in the 40s. In the 40s. He was Harvard trained. And so it was quite scandalous. It's brilliant. It's scandalous, though. So I guess his family didn't talk about it very much. But God, comedy for me For instance, once I got divorced, I would tell everyone my former husband was gay because I kept quiet. I would go to bars for the first time because I was going to be single. Woo. I'd tell a man, oh, my ex is gay. Well, don't tell men that because immediately they look on your physique to see if there's something on you that made them gay. Now we're back to like, yes, I have the superpower. Poof, you're gay. And him in the stirrups, he's down reading my chart. And it was shortly after we got separated. And we were well known in this community. In fact, we ballroom danced with my gynecologist. He's at the stirrups and he goes, you don't think there's anything you, and he starts to say, did.
He did not.
And I remember sitting up he's Harvard trained, sitting up in the stirrups. My feet are still in it. And I'm screaming, why? Do you see something down there? Is there a Venus flytrap? Like, what is the deal?
Yeah.
Did I miss something internally? And that's what it would be, those things that I could get up on stage and just say, does anybody else think this is whack? I'd get down and it was safe. I also learned a lesson of pretending, becoming the person you wanted to be. Because when I started doing stand-up, it was right when The Secret was coming out. Have you read The Secret? The book, The Secret?
I have not.
It was the early manifesting tools. So if you asked the universe for what you wanted, we needed to just ask. There was an example of a stand-up who had always seen themselves as a stand-up. So I said, well, I'm going to see myself as a stand-up. I'd go to the grocery store. If I was in the checkout line, I'd say, I'm a stand-up. And they'd start laughing. And I wouldn't even have to tell a joke. And I realized, oh, this is powerful. And then I would work my routine with anybody that I could tell a story to. For me, it was magic. My throat chakra or whatever must have been blocked because that opened the heck out of it. It served me ever since. In fact, for the last 15 years, I started doing improv as well. And I often said, what am I doing this all for? Because I'm not really getting paid for it. And then I realized, wait, your time is coming. This is going to lead you into motivating women through your voice, through your humor, through telling stories. I gave a speech last Friday, and one of the most moving things, it was a Mexican woman, and she told me in Spanish, you were me. You told my story.
How does that make you feel?
Oh, just like it's happening.
Yeah.
Because when I started my weight loss journey, I started it because my son was in his third year of medical school. He was living about as far away from me as he possibly could in Watertown, New York. He called me in February of 2020 and said, Mom, I'm coming home next week. I'm leaving for Haiti. I'm going to stay with you for a few days, but I'm leaving for Haiti to do a medical mission trip. He's a grown man. I would think he was going with a big organization to Haiti. That was not the case. He comes home, we're sitting at a restaurant, and I'm looking at where he's going in Haiti, and it's in this remote, mountainous, unreachable part of Haiti. And he's paying for his own trip. He's going with a dentist and a dental assistant or something from a local church in our community. But that's it. I would have stood on the tarmac to block him, but I couldn't. He was a grown man. We're beginning to hear the mutterings of the pandemic, but whoever knew it was going to turn into a full-blown border closure. Off he goes. The last picture I get of him, he's landing in Haiti in a Indiana Jones plane.
Oh, Lord.
I don't hear from him again. 4 days later, Trump closes the border, and my baby boy is unreachable.
You had to be terrified.
I am telling you, I prayed to every God possible, Buddha, the universe, anybody that would. I remember, I know exactly in my room, me crying at night because I'm single. It wasn't like I could call in whatever. I cried and cried and cried. And I said, God, if you bring him back to me and I don't have to rescue him like a cowgirl, I was going to go. I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to give back. I'm just going to give back. I'm not making an empty promise. Long story short, we got my son back. And then I went on this journey of how will I give back? What are 60-year-olds doing that are revolutionary? I went on Instagram because there I was going to find my shiro. And in fact, I did.
You did?
I found Train with Joan. Are you familiar?
No,
Joan McDonald?
no, I'm writing that one down.
Oh my gosh, she is 76 years old. She has 1.7 million followers. She started a weight loss journey at 70.
Oh my gosh.
Your mind's going to be blown.
Okay.
It's at Train with Joan. Anyway, Joan became my hero, and her daughter was running a program called The Wonder Women. And the Wonder Women was a transformation program that Joan had gone. You have to see Joan. You'll lose. I wish we had something in the background to show. She's incredible. When I saw her, I said, if she can do it, I can do it.
How much did you weigh at this point?
185,
And how tall are you?
5'5".
Okay.
It was not a pretty picture. I loved being in the gym. I was not sedentary, but I just liked Chardonnay and Thai food more. I had grown comfortable. I was living the life of being invisible. I just sort of grown into that invisibility, and that became safe, comfortable. But I knew my health wasn't the best it could be. When I saw Joan that was practically dying, I applied to her daughter's program, and I didn't get in. And I applied again, and I didn't get in again. But the second time around, now this is almost the end of 2020, they have hired other coaches. So I get this beautiful yogi coach. Like, she is the yin to my excited, crazy, hand moving. You know what was more important than doing macronutrition, because the program was based on weightlifting and macronutrition, was self-love.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
Who knew? Never got the memo on self-love in 63 years. Put myself first. Fill my cup first. Put my oxygen mask on first.
Yep.
Who knew?
It's the basis for everything. If you need to fix something, deal with some trauma, deal with whatever, you got to get there first. I'm convinced that is the first step.
But women don't even begin to know how. And women of a certain age were not raised. I don't know a lot of women that were told, now, honey, it starts with you. You high five yourself in the morning and you tell yourself you're doing a good job and you make that yummy food for yourself. Because women make 80% of most of the decisions in a household. From food to laundry to managing to micromanaging, you're the default parent. You might be hiding a secret. You might be having a tough career, but we're managing all of that. But we're not saying that for us to be first will make all this other stuff exponentially better
and easier.
And so the first time I started saying, I am going to have to say no to some things to be able to put myself first. And that's scary because all of a sudden you're realizing I might not have the same relationships when this is all said and done, for owning my nose, for making my health and fitness a priority.
Mm-hmm.
I often say the weight loss was wonderful. Now the outside matched the inside, but it was that inside woman that got me here. She's always been here. And now I often say it's where the work begins.
Yeah, because now, what am I going to do with all this? You've got this amazing experience and so much to share. Now you got to get it out there.
The work doesn't end.
Uh-uh.
Because I think a lot of people think, I can't tell you how many times I've heard after I did my bodybuilding competition, well, are you just going back to like your regular life? No, this is Susan 2.0. So no, the work doesn't end here. You don't get comfortable here because comfortable was where I was at. It's the challenge. It's finding a new summit, no? And they don't always have to be Everest, but in this world of limitless possibilities, you don't rest on your laurels. It's been a fascinating journey, a fascinating journey.
I want to back up a little bit because you started this I don't want to call it a weight loss journey because it was a physical transformation journey inside and out. What was your goal? You weren't thinking you were going to compete in a body competition when you started this, did you?
No, one of the things that I loved about the Wonder Woman program was that they would often get you to do something fairly uncomfortable for a lot of women so that you had a goal down the road. It was a photo shoot. And again, I don't know that a lot of women my age have ever really done like an editorial photo shoot where you're putting on a bathing suit and you're posing and you're a model. And it was almost like this pretend.
Eek.
Exactly. Talk about being outside your comfort
We
zone.
don't even like being in fitting rooms in a bathing suit, much less someone taking pictures of us.
But my coach would say in the preparation, probably 6 months into the program, she was like, you've got to do a photo shoot. She named a couple of photographers. Now, I had no idea. One of the men she picked, she was like, oh, the owner of the program has done photo shoots with him. And this woman's, her body's phenomenal. I said, okay. And I called him and they got me booked in, and I was booked for Las Vegas in the desert for another 3 months. So I had like 3 months out for the photo shoot. No idea who he was. He was famous. I had no idea. It was probably best that I didn't. I had never posed before, none of it. She would say to me as we got closer and closer that a lot of women would sabotage it. They would unbeknowingly get sick or just not be able to do it. It was so much bigger. And I kept saying, but why? What am I going to use those damn pictures for? She goes, it isn't the pictures. It isn't the weight loss. It's because after the photo shoot, you're going to be the woman who did the photo shoot.
Yeah.
And it's the did part.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost if we all ask ourselves, but what if I did? But what if I did? This simple, not so simple exercise, because I will tell you, if you had followed me out on that shoot, it was a stand-up comedy routine. I almost died in the desert because I was underhydrated. It was 110 degrees at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in August in the Las Vegas desert. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago where Vegas had like the heat dome over it. It was so hot.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in a itsy bitsy bikini with this major, he was so kind. And Kai York, shout out to Kai York. Amazing. This European, just guru, half Gandhi kind of photographer, right? It's just me, a bathing suit, the makeup artist. The wind is blowing like at 30 knots. They've installed this, they were like fabric that you held on and danced with. Now I'm in my tippy toes. I'm in the desert. I get up on my tippy toes. It's 1,000 degrees. I haven't eaten. And I realize I'm going to pass out. I'm working medicine, so I know exactly what's happening. And then this is probably a little graphic for your viewers. I then realized I'm in the desert and I have to go to the bathroom.
Oh, no.
And it's not number one. I thought to myself, if I poop in my bathing suit in front of these people, I will just die. I will just die. Kill me now. Let me be buried in the desert. Somehow I had no food in me, so thank God that feeling passed. But I got up 6 different times to do it. I would stand for 5 minutes, almost pass out, sit down. Stand for 5 minutes, take the pictures. There's one picture of me. I had told him this was the spirit of what I wanted you to capture. I used to box,
Mm-hmm.
so I had the wraps. I almost wanted him to paint bruises on me because I said, I want you to capture a woman who's still standing. And God knows the universe said, and we will test you.
Exactly.
But you know, after all of that, I literally became the woman who did a photo shoot. And that courage and that act of doing created this effect that I never, ever expected. And that was the moment I said, on to the next summit. I am going to compete. And I made up my mind right then and there. And I had people, 23, 24 weeks, significant people, tell me, you're not ready yet. You should wait. And the minute they did, I said, watch me.
You know what it is? It's not so much the confidence, it's having the courage. Because I think it's two different things. What you showed was you had courage to get out there and do the photo shoot, and you had courage to pick a new goal. And you did it. You did compete. I looked at your transformation, by the way, Susan, of where you started to where you are now. It's not just your physique, you can see it in your face, just how you present yourself. I've seen little snippets of you being in front of a group of people doing your motivational talk. The energy that you bring is so inspiring. It's just really cool to see. And you're 66 and you're not finished yet.
No, I'm just starting.
It's amazing.
Who knew? And here's the secret for your followers and your listeners. I'm not the only one. I'm not that special. There are a ton of us forming these links on a chain. When the creator of Wonder Woman developed Wonder Woman, they asked him to create a male superhero. And he said no. And he said no because women were superior, because we were about truth and love and justice. He also predicted that in 100 years, we would take over. Guess where we're at right now? We're almost at that 100 years. There is a movement collectively of women saying, and I say this in Spanish, no más. Stop telling us we can't. Stop telling us we're past our prime, Don Lemon.
Yeah, screw Don Lemon.
Screw Don Lemon. But stop telling us that. We almost need more Don Lemons, because that just makes us stand up together and say, wait, let us show you. And it's just not me. There are women that are doing some amazing things. And for the first time, you know what? We're starting to realize where the gold is. I will tell you, hands down, it wasn't about the weight loss. The mindset work was a big one, but it's women beginning to realize we're stronger when we empower each other.
Amen.
When I say to you, Michelle, do you need my shoulder? Because you step right up here and I'll lift you up. But tomorrow, I've got this thing and I might need that left shoulder of you. I got you. I don't want to fight with you. I don't need to compete with you, because there's a space for all of us at the table. There's a space for all of us, no matter what our age is. And I often say too, our mess, your mess is your message. That's the first part of message. We need to hear more stories. We need to see more women like me taking back their power, taking back their power. And that's scary.
Yeah.
But it's happening. And through podcasts like this, you're spreading and adding to that link on the chain, and that link on the chain where we're not fighting each other. Don't pit us against each other. Don't do that. Because if we're pitted against each other, we're not powerful. But if we support one another, holy moly.
It's amazing. It's all boats rise in high tides.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. I may have to steal that.
Steal away. I didn't coin it.
All boats rise in high tide.
That's part of my calling here with this is I want to highlight women that are doing amazing things and giving back and wanting that for other women. You could not have closed this conversation more appropriately. I'm so fortunate that you said yes to being on this show today.
I DM'd you, didn't I? Didn't I DM you?
I don't know how we connected.
Let me give a tip to your listeners. Just be bold. I think I DM'd you because I was following you. I don't wait anymore. I don't wait to make friendships. I don't wait for someone to ask me. I follow that new tagline, what if I did? You could say no, but you said yes. Pretty cool.
And I'm so glad I did.
Thank you.
Oh,
We're besties, now.
I know. You're not going to be able to get rid of me now.
Yay.
You're stuck. You're stuck, lady. Thank you.
It was my honor. Take care.
Follow Asking for a Friend on social media outlets and provide a review and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews and sharing help us grow.